Konrad von Carstein and the Second Vampire Wars. Following Vlad's death, only 5 vampires claimed to be the heir of his legacy. These vampires were Fritz, Hans, Peter, Konrad and Manfred von Carstein. For more than 40 years afterwards, the vampires of the von Carstein line have fought a vicious power struggle against each other, giving the Empire vital time to recover from the desolation brought about by Vlad's invasion. In time, Fritz von Carstein was killed on the field of battle when he foolishly attempted to besiege the massive fortress of Mittelheim. Hans von Carstein perished when Konrad instigated a quarrel between each other over the toughest amongst them. Peter was slain in his coffin by a vengeful witch hunter. It is said that Manfred von Carstein also aided in his death. After Peter's death, Manfred von Carstein disappeared from Sylvania, leaving Konrad as the new, undisputed ruler of all Sylvania. In time, Konrad had purposely enacted the Second Vampire Wars, much to the Empire's dismay. While Vlad von Carstein was patient yet ambitious, Konrad von Carstein was simply a mad butcher. Evil, merciless, and insanely violent, lacking the necromantic skills of his predecessor, Konrad was forced to enslave any magicians he could capture and force them to do his bidding as powerful necromancers. Once more, the vampire counts of Sylvania rampaged across the lands of the Empire. Indeed, Konrad is beyond bloodthirsty, even amongst his own kind. Whilst Vlad offered his opponents a choice between servitude or death, Konrad offered them a choice between dying quickly or dying slowly. Whilst Vlad's ambition was to rule the vampire empire and the empire of man, Konrad's single motive was to simply indulge himself in endless slaughter. His warmongering nature took his army to the far south of the empire, where he came into contact with the Blood Knights of the Blood Keep, whom are all bearers of the Blood Dragon bloodline. With these knights folding into his ranks, Konrad was able to destroy all those who dare oppose him. Despite Konrad's complete lack of strategic planning, hysteria, and grave tactical errors at the Battle of Carstein-The, however, Konrad faced a powerful army that contained a massive wagon train long-ranged artillery. When battle commenced, the artillery was horrific to behold upon the slow-moving Sylvanian army. In desperation, Konrad both threatened, bribed and pleaded with his necromancers to keep his army moving forward. He offered power and riches to his captive wizards as they combined their powers to unleash a scourging wind on the army. Dark magic swept across the Imperial ranks. In short time, the Imperial soldiers began to feel their souls being clawed from the ethereal hands. Panic began to spread as the unnatural gale began to strip the life of the Imperial soldiers one by one. In a moment of rare tactical genius, Konrad saw the moment was ripe for a counter-attack and sent forth his elite squadron of Blood Knights and Drakenhof Templars into the fray. Faced with terrors and armoured vampires, the Avaland army broke and fled. Konrad, like the bloodthirsty creature he is, hounded the Imperial soldiers for 5 days and 5 nights, ensuring that all those who participated in the battle were hunted down and killed to the last. In his overzealous pride and need to draw more blood, the vampire count had instigated a bloody war with the dwarfs against the cautious advice of his few remaining advisors. Attacking isolated villages and surface settlements within the domains of Zubar, the dwarf king of Zubar himself finally had enough and mustered a grand army to punish the vampire for his wrongdoings. The vampire met the dwarven army at the town of Knuckleane. In the battle, the dwarven runesmith countered the necromantic spells of Konrad's enslaved necromancers with ease. Robbed of their sustaining power, the skeleton warriors and zombies of Konrad's army lay where they fell, blasted apart by a horrific barrage of cannons and mortar artillery. Konrad remained confident despite the setback, and launched an all-out assault on the dwarven ranks, leading the assault himself. The vampire drove directly towards the cadre of runesmiths, whilst his blood knight smashed into the disciplined ranks of dwarven warriors. Konrad slew the runesmith personally, drinking their blood and giving his captive necromancers the time they needed to resurrect the fallen. It was a hopeless battle, but the dwarves still fought stubbornly until the very end. Their own king had challenged the blood count in personal combat, but instead of accepting, Konrad dispatched Wallach Harkin, the Grand Master of the Blood Knights, to fight as his champion. Though the duel was bitter and close, the Grand Master finally killed the Dwarven King with a mighty blow and gorged himself on royal blood. Within the next hour, the last of the dwarves were dead. Konrad was so unwilling and wavering, vicious in his undead assault, that he confronted with the common enemy. The three claimants to the imperial throne had put aside their differences and combined their mighty armies into one titanic force at the Battle of the Four Armies. The three imperial grand armies united in their forces against the undead army of Konrad's, just outside the fortress of Middelheim. This battle became infamously known as the Great Betrayal, enacted by the two of the three imperial leaders. He would be a prime candidate to the new emperor. Even as support for him grew within the council hall, Helmut began to act erratically. Struck dumb at a critical time in an infamous event, Helmut's skin began to peel off, and his eyes suddenly popped out of his own skull. Even Helmut's son, Helmar, refused his father's claim to the throne once it was discovered that his father was killed and turned into a zombie under Konrad's control. Seeing that the battle was lost, the terrified Blood Knights fled the battlefield, hoping to escape far enough from the vengeful dwarfs and Imperials. Despite the magically inept Konrad tried to hold the undead army together all by himself. But the effort proved too much to bear, and in an instant Konrad's mind finally snapped. In a mad fit, Konrad wandered away from the battle as the undead army began to disintegrate, shouting maniacally in his mind, and his mind lay shattered. Konrad wandered the forest aimlessly until he was ambushed by Gulfbrad, who then captured Konrad, held him down, whilst the newly elected Count Helmar impaled his father's killer with his own runefang. With Konrad's death, the Second Vampire War was finally over, and in time the elected counts began to squabble amongst themselves once more.